So I've been wanting to make this video for the longest time, but I've not got around to doing it for like multiple reasons. Part of me is like, do I actually want to put this kind of content out there? I don't want to step upon anyone's toes or annoy anybody. Also, I was like, should I make this a really high quality video with lots of bits interjected in and just making it like really cool and aesthetic, like an actual product review or comparison, I should say. But I keep thinking about doing it and then never having the opportunity and then not getting around to doing it. So here goes. So what I would say right from the top of the video is two things. This is not throwing any shade at anyone about anyone that's I've purchased scissors from in the past. So there's literally no hate at all. And the second thing is, if you're not a scissor head or you're not wanting to hear my opinion on these two sets of scissors, then just go ahead and skip now. But I can see I've already spent a minute just with the setup for this. So what this video is actually about is about these two pairs of scissors in front of me. So on top, I've got the Ericsson 5.5 inch scissor from Quartz Steels. And on the bottom, I've got the, I forget what the actual name of it is, but it's like the Wings limited edition 5.25 inch Damascus steel scissor. So at a quick glance, these scissors look pretty similar, really. They've both got offset handles, they've both got narrow blades, they've both got detachable finger rests, they've both got similar cutouts on the handle, they've both got similar finger holes, similar-ish blades. But that's kind of like where the similarities end, really, because in hand, they're quite a different experience. So, a little bit of a story about myself. I came from a company where it was very much within their brand identity to have super duper large scissors. So I spent a good portion of my career just cutting with huge scissors. So I would use a 7-inch scissor for literally everything I did. I'd do it on short haircuts, long haircuts, texturizing, blunt cuts, precision cuts, if you could call it that back then, and everything in between essentially. So I'd use it literally pretty much one scissor for everything. When I started teaching more and educating more outside of that brand identity that I was within, a lot of my students would say to me that my scissors would look scary. So just for reference, kind of like a 7-inch scissor will probably be out here in comparison to these two scissors that, you know, significantly bigger. And there was two things there. So one, I didn't want to scare my students when I was cutting hair. And I think two, that actually teaching hair myself and then slowing it down to the bare fundamentals meant that I naturally started moving down scissor sizes for reasons of accuracy, making everything very perfect and very neat and all the rest of it, which kind of led me on my journey towards getting towards smaller scissors. So I ended up with just buying very, very cheap 5-inch scissors just to see what it felt like in hand. And I found that as I gradually went down scissor sizes from 7s to 6s to 5.5s to 5s, I really enjoyed the feeling of a smaller scissor in my hand. Started looking around the market, seeing what was on the market, etc. And one brand that really caught my eye was Wings. It was just a brand here. So these are kind of like your supposedly gold standard in precision cutting scissors. They're like what a lot of the top people within precision cutting would be their go-to scissor. These ones in particular are slightly niche even within that, because for Wings, what they normally do is they specialise in a beveled blade scissor, which what that means is, oh, they're a little bit dirty, so I won't use them in a little while. But what that means is a beveled blade scissor, the bottom blade here would grip the hair, and the top blade would almost act like a guillotine and come down and slice down on the hair. The other type of scissor is a convex blade scissor. So what that means is that both the blades do cutting. So equally, the top and the bottom blades cut hair. There's pros and cons to that, but that's what the background I was coming from was. So I wanted something that would be kind of easily transferable. I didn't want to feel that kind of like bite and clamp. I wanted something that I could still use other techniques with, so like maybe a bit of slide cutting, maybe a bit of slicing, maybe a bit of point cutting, and everything would still work for me, coming from convex blade to going to a convex blade. What particularly attracted me to this pair of Wings is they were made out of Damascus steel, which is a super high grade, very high quality steel, okay? I really wanted a small scissor with offset handles, I wanted a scissor that I didn't know if I wanted to be as small as a 5-inch, but not quite big as a 5.5 inch. And also, what attracted to me this scissor in particularly, that it would have a countersunk, I don't know what you call this in centre, bolt or pivot point, I guess, in the centre here. Those are the qualities of the scissor that really attracted me to this scissor, which very similarly, a lot of features are also appearing in this scissor, as well as having a narrow blade. I would add to that as well. So again, you can see it's like an offset handle, detachable finger rest, which is actually my preference. What I actually like is a very simple design. I don't like scissors that are too busy, so just a nice comfortable handle for resting your fingers here is enough for me. This is actually a 5.5-inch scissor, which I'm going to get to in just a second. But as you can see, a lot of the features are very similar to the Wings. However, this scissor on top, full retail, I think was something like around £650. So I didn't quite pay that much for it. I got it in a Black Friday sale, but it was somewhere within the region of like it was over £500 I paid for it basically. So the most I'd ever spent on a scissor. So when I received the scissor, I kind of expected it to, I don't know if my expectations were too high or what it was, but I expected it to, you know, be buttery smooth, cut through the hair like, you know, like a hot knife through butter, essentially, is what I was looking for. What I actually got was, from the second I got this scissor, and I don't think it's through any fault of the person who supplied me with these scissors or anything like that, I think that what I was getting was, and there's no crunch or anything like that as I close the scissor, what I'm actually noticing now is under light and this camera, I can actually see that, and I noticed this a few minutes ago as well, and I've never seen this before on this scissor, and I'm just double checking that this is actually the case, that it looks almost like there's some scratches going along the edge of the blade. So I've got these scissors brand new. Like I said, paid like something around the region of £550 retail for them. And what I was finding was when I was closing the scissor, I was cutting precision lines, and this last bit here, all I can describe it was it felt a bit gritty. So it felt a little bit gritty as I was like coming through. And I was just expecting the scissor to basically like slide through the hair, as I was just mentioning. So kind of really effortless in the way that I come to cut this. However, I found that that was not the case for the scissors to be brand new out of the box. Like I said, these are actually a very limited edition scissors. So there's only something in the region of 100 of these made. I think there was only 100 of these made. And somewhere on here, that you won't be able to pick up on camera, but these are actually number 12 made out of 100. So you can see just here by my thumb that this is number 12 of 100 made. So I know one other guy with this set of scissors, but you won't come across a lot of these scissors out in the wild, because like I said, they're very limited. Is that part of the problem with the way that these scissors function? Maybe. Is it a bit outside of the realms of, like I said, Wings tend to be a specialist in bevel blade scissors, where these are convex blade scissors. And was that maybe something they're not so familiar with making, and therefore performance isn't as good to a company that are used to making those kind of convex blade scissors? I don't know. But what I was finding was they weren't cutting through the hair super smoothly. Okay, so sent them back to the supplier to get them professionally sharpened. And when I got them back, they were no better, they were no worse. They felt literally identical, exactly the same. So I kind of persisted on with them for a bit because I just so badly wanted them to work for me, because it was a brand that I kind of glamorized in my head. Wing scissors have this kind of like, not exotic, but kind of this kind of like very premium kind of, not aesthetic, but kind of like attachment to them is like, it's quite a premium brand. So I just really wanted these scissors to work out for me. I really wanted them to be like a versatile scissor that I could use for a lot of different things. But not only was I disappointed with the sharpness of the tips, I was kind of also just disappointed with a few of the features, mainly with the width. And I'm just going to get this blade up here for comparison, if I can get this. The width of the end of the blades. And it's really hard. It's much, much easier to catch this. I'm trying to get the light to catch it in such a way you can see. So you can see the silver, the really bright light on the left-hand side. Look at the width of the end of the blade on the left. And with a really bright silver light, look at the width of the blade on the right. The right-hand blade is the quarter steels blade. So on the quarter steels blade, the tip of the scissor is way, way finer. And also, you'll notice the end of the scissor is quite rounded, okay? So what I was finding is when I was blunt cutting or club cutting with the scissor, they weren't really great because, like I said, this last portion of the blade here was kind of like catching and not really, as I was kind of like doing like, say, a precision bob, it was kind of like just slightly, not crazy, but slightly pushing that last bit of hair, so not getting a super clean cut. And then if I was wanting to do any more versatile techniques, bear in mind this is a convex scissor and not a bevel blade scissor, the point cutting was just kind of like dull because the end of the blade was just a little bit on the chunkier end and a little bit on the rounder end. So width-wise, from left to right, just a little bit wider, and going this way was just a little bit rounder. I wondered why it was that the tips of these scissors didn't cut particularly well. And when I got into this, looking at this in more kind of detail, like I mentioned to you earlier, one part of this is that I really liked, or thought I really liked, was the countersunk bolt here. But I don't know which of these two elements it is, or neither, that make the tips of scissors not particularly great at cutting. But this bolt, even all the way up to its tightest setting, and I never suggest you should do your scissors up to the tightest setting because it's not generally favourable for the metal of the scissor, still didn't solve the issue of the ends feeling that they're not cutting particularly well. And even when they are up to tight setting, they're not particularly tight. I think these are only a couple of clicks away from being at its tightest setting, and they're still reasonably loose-ish. They're not particularly tight. I don't know whether it's that with this bolt, the fact it's so small not being powerful, or the fact that this gap here being so close to the bolt itself, which isn't very strong, means that if you even put a slight push upwards on your scissor, it means that the blades aren't quite reaching. So it only requires very little pressure due to this gap here, that if I just squeeze it gently with my fingers, it starts to open like a tweezer almost. And I don't know whether that's a research and development oversight on Wing's part, whether this bolt isn't strong enough, whether this gap is too large and happens too soon close to the pivot, or whether it's a combination of the both or neither. But I kind of feel that that could contribute to the ends of the scissor not being particularly tight and not cutting particularly well. I don't know. It's just an observation. I'm not a scissor manufacturing expert. It's just something that I thought. Also, I remember when I first got these scissors, I was a bit disappointed because it doesn't really pick it up on camera. But looking when you look really close at the scissor, there's almost this bit here and here. Looks like it's been hit with like a metal file. I don't know whether that was part of the, when they were being handmade, they might have been in a vice or something like that, being held. But from brand new, they always had that slight abrasion there. So I don't know. And comparatively, I have to show you obviously the Ericsson now. So no matter how hard I push or squeeze on here, it's not parting the ends of the scissor. So I can't. And also, these scissors are nowhere close to their tightest setting, and they've got a gorgeous swing to them. So just another reason why the quarter steel scissor works better for me. I would say qualities that I did like about the scissor. I quite liked the narrowness of the blade, that was nice, and I did quite like that they had this countersunk bolt in the centre here, so you would never knock into your comb when, say, cutting through the comb for a precision cut. I also, just my preference is, like I said, personally, I do prefer a detachable finger rest, just for like comfort and feeling, basically. That's why I kind of prefer that. But that's kind of like where it ends, what I liked about it, if I'm going to be honest. With regards to the handle, again, it's much more of a hand feel thing, but I've got large hands, and I actually like a real snug, tight fit on my hand. I like it to be really kind of like locked in there with my hand. This thumb hole, although it doesn't look it, is not actually particularly tight on my thumb. So I don't often put my thumb, as you know from my other reels, I don't often put my thumb straight through like this. I do work like this, to be honest, a majority of the time, but because that thumb rest is slightly larger, I don't feel that I've got the kind of security there. Also, I didn't actually know I liked this until I started working with quarter steels, but the ergonomics of this is just, the profile's really flat. So when working like this, it doesn't really have anything to kind of like rest my thumb in. So just to summarize this off, I've spent 13 minutes or so talking about just this scissor. But just to summarize, it kind of underwhelmed me. It did underwhelm me a little bit. I don't know if my expectations were too high. I was expecting too much of this. Handmade in Japan, very high quality steel, etc. But out there in the real world, when you're cutting, as I found out, it doesn't actually matter what your scissors are made out of. What you want is the performance. Okay, so I've been through an extensive range of the quarter steel scissors, and they've all been really, really great scissors. I've really enjoyed using all of them. Obviously, with anybody, you have personal preference. So some lean to more towards others, more towards some scissors than others. But I have to say, this and the Vasco scissor from the Quarter Steels range have been not just my favourite scissors from Quarter Steels, but my favourite scissors that I've used overall in my pretty much 20-year hairdressing career, full stop. And I've used a lot of different scissors. There's no point in name dropping, but just all the key brands, all the big brands of scissors that you and I know, I've used them. And the Ericsson 5.5, this scissor in my hand, and the Vasco 6-inch leaf bladed slicing scissor are by far the funnest scissors I've ever worked with. So when I'm getting more precise about my work, it's just a no-brainer for me. I just reach straight for this scissor. Okay, so comparatively, it almost looks identical. This scissor is a 5.25-inch scissor. This scissor is a 5.5-inch scissor. However, if we put the bolts right next to one another, I don't know if you could call that 1/4 of an inch difference between the two scissors. I don't know if I'm measuring this wrong or something's up, but there is very marginal difference. In hand, you don't really notice the difference in size. We've already spoken about the difference between the width of the two blades. You can see again that the Quarter Steels on the right-hand side is a much finer tip than the wing scissor on the right. Why does that matter? So for me, I do a lot of precision cutting, or I do precision cutting. When I'm cutting with my finer tip, it allows me to get in there a lot more nice and tight, make that really clean, blunt line without pushing the hair out of the blade. Also, I tend to do a lot of pointing with my scissors. So if I'm refining, say, if I'm refining a precision line, I will go in with the points of my scissors and just nibble off any little bits of graduation that might have appeared along, or any imperfections that might have appeared along the way. The finer tip is better than that. Also, you can see the end of the blade is much less rounded than the wing scissor, which means I can get in there and get more detail. Not only that, but because it's also a convex blade scissor, that means it's really versatile. I can do a lot with this scissor. I can go in and get a lot of texture and detail within that texture really easily. The end portion of the blade is super duper sharp and super clean. I can slice with this scissor, I can slide cut with this scissor. This scissor is super versatile. For a lot of people, I would say you could buy this scissor and this scissor alone, and it would pretty much do everything you want it to do. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I like to have specific scissors for doing specific jobs, but this scissor is very, very versatile. It's got an offset handle, which is something I really like. It's got the detachable finger rest. It has got, and like I said, I didn't actually know I liked this as I started working with Quarter Steels. But the fact that this drops here with my hand position here, I feel so much more secure with holding the scissor. And I'm not being dramatic, but with the wings, I kind of felt sometimes like I was going to drop them and they weren't securely in my hand. Whereas the quartz steels, they feel much secure in my hand. The finger holes are slightly smaller. And actually, ironically, Dan always sends me the quartz steel scissors with these inserts. I've actually, to be honest, since I've been on quartz steels, I've not used anything else, but I ended up putting these in my wings just because if I were to ever use them, say at home or doing something like that, it would just give me a little bit more stability within the thumb rest. So actually, ironically, took out this scissor and put it in this scissor to make this thumb hole as small as this thumb hole, if that makes sense. It doesn't have a countersunk blade, but bolt, but it's never been an issue. It's so low that I've never had any issue with it knocking into my comb. And also with the actual bolt itself being that kind of slight dome shaped, if it was to run in, it would just kind of like round, it would just gently push away from the comb anyway. So it wouldn't really intervene with what you're doing. Like I said, it's got a 5.5 inch blade. However, it feels really compact. It really, really feels super duper compact scissor. And to be honest, this is close to being my dream scissor. If I was going to have like a signature scissor, it would probably be this one, to be honest. This has got everything that I'm looking for from a scissor pretty much. Super sharp, super versatile, narrow blade, pointy tips. We've got a decent enough countersunk center bolt. We've got the nice ergonomics in the handle. That's just my rice cooker going off. My rice is ready for dinner. And really comfortable ergonomic finger rests as well. So to be honest, I've been surprised with how much I've loved this scissor. I really enjoy using it. And like I said, probably my favorite scissor I've ever used. So take from that what you will. Just to round this off again, I don't expect anyone to have made it this far in the video. But yeah, this isn't throwing shade at anyone who's supplied me with any scissors in the past. It's not necessarily this scissor is better than this scissor. It's just what works for me. And I've found that the Quartz Steel Ericsson has been the scissor that has worked best for me, my hands, my personal abilities, and my way of cutting. It's just been really, really great. So like I said, for a long time, I've been wanting to make this review. I think I pretty much covered everything I want to say. But I was kind of always nervous about putting it out there because I wanted to either make it a high quality video, maybe interject some B-roll, etc. Or even, not wanting to sort of annoy anybody. But I think it's good to get it out there that sometimes you can kind of, I think it's more than anything for maybe if any of my learners are watching me right now, if you're wanting to buy a pair of scissors for maybe because it looks fancy or it sounds fancy or the description's super fancy or you think it's going to do a job for you, like it's going to basically do the work for you, just because it costs a lot of money, that is not always the case. I didn't mention this actually, sorry. So this scissor is, don't quote me exactly, but I think it's somewhere around the £250 mark, maybe even less than that. So full RRP of both the scissors, this one is close to being 3 times the price. So again, take from that what you will. But thanks for listening to me if you got this far, and maybe it will help somebody out there. Cheers.